Good evening. I'd like to call to order the June 26th Conservation Commission meeting. Starting off, we have an item of continued business. Berkeley Development LLC, project location 129 Lowell Street and 115 Christian Street. The Berkeley Development is seeking a determination whether there is a resource area subject to the Wetlands Protection Act present on site. Today we will hear the response from a third-party engineer hired to analyze this potential wetlands area. Good evening.
You want to hear from the peer reviewer first, I take it? My name is Jeffrey Brehm. I'm representing the applicant.
You're more than welcome to start. It looks like you're up. Go for it.
I'm up. I'm standing shore. My name is Jeffrey Brehm. Like I said, from Meisner Brehm Corporation. We're engineers and surveyors, and we're working on this property. And this was continued to hire your peer reviewer or your reviewer to look to see if there was any wetland there. And he's written your report two days ago, June 24th. We responded to that report on June 25th in a written letter. And then he responded back, I think yesterday, also June 25th. So in 2 days, we've done a lot of letters back and forth. Would you like me to go through my letter first, or would you like to have Mr. Garneau's report presented to you?
Why don't we start with the report? We'll stay in a chronological order.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If you don't mind staying in a chronological order, I'd like to hear from...
Sure. So Mr. Garneau?
From Garneau and Northeastern, please.
Hello to the board. I'm Kevin Garneau with Northeastern Consultant Forestry Services. We also have Leo Garneau on the Zoom meeting as well. Obviously, the board has received the emailed report. Have you had a chance to go over it?
Yes.
All right. There's an area of interest, which is a triangle area with a drainage out. It was indicated the drainage on the 1-foot contour intervals. We provided some historic data that showed that at one point there was a drainage ditch exiting the area of interest where we found hydric soils. So we had determined that basically due to the spreading of the loam that a wetlands and stream was filled.
Is there anything else from your report that you'd like to note?
No, unless the board has some questions. We did cover the catch basins because I know the board was concerned about flooding and also the isolated land subject to flooding, that it pretty much, there is no basin, so there's not even drainage calcs you can do because there is no basin. So isolated land subject to flooding was never an issue.
Yeah, it was a very complete report. Thank you for your time. I don't have any questions. It's pretty thoroughly explained. Anybody else got anything for him?
I was interested in your methodology of trying to determine whether the hydric soils existed in the original location of where we suspected there was a historical wetland area. How many test pits did you do in that area?
I did 3 test pits that are logged in there, and then we did some auger holes. And then there's a lot of area in the triangle which, according to neighbor, that it might have been a farm pond that was filled sometime mid-70s. So there's a lot of refusal where we can't get in with the auger, and we had already suggested that the use of a backhoe might be better to define the edge of that wet area.
I noticed in your report that you didn't mention crushed stone, and when I visited the site in April, that was a very evident part of the fill. You mentioned filled with loam, I believe.
That's correct. In the area of the triangle, we had not dug down enough where we found any fill. There was some crushed stone as you come in the grass driveway and take a right. Right there was crushed stone, which I believe is outside the wetlands. I don't know if it was ruts or whatever that they were addressing. And then there was some crushed stone down towards Christian Street.
Okay. Let's see. There's a very prominent willow bush there that I noticed immediately because you can tell the amount of the fill surrounding the bush.
That's correct.
you said 6 to 9 inches, and that's about what I saw. Would you say that that was the center of your area of interest, as you call it in your report?
No, that would be the tail end where it gets narrower and heads down to Christian. Above the salix, the willow shrub there, would be the triangle area that I did just roughly, I had created a rough area. If I didn't do this for you. I just drew really quick. Just a polygon area that kind of shows it. It doesn't show the shrub the best, but that's the area of contention.
Okay.
Everything else covered from left to right. Outside of that area, there is also sensitive fern. I don't know if the commission saw it, that are 4 feet high. Beautiful growing plants, but they're in an uplands.
Okay, so on one side, just below the building, there was also an area where there was actually standing water. Was
Right,
that
the
part
sea.
of your area of interest as well?
Yes, that area is approximately 62 and a half feet from the corner of the building measured out. We actually did one of the test pits right there.
And so, did you match your triangle here up with actual elevations on the site or not?
No, we didn't. That's just a really rough sketch of, in that area is where the majority of the wetlands was. We had searched the whole site for wetlands, basins for isolated land subject to flooding, and that's the only area that we found that there were issues.
Okay, and you said one pit was 13 feet from the willow. One you said was in that area where I saw standing water.
That's correct.
And where was the third one?
It's towards the top of the that triangle area.
Okay, and what did you find in that pit?
That pit was, and it's listed there, was about that. I'll have to refer to the thing. I believe it was 6 to 10 inches of fill, and then we hit a dock A horizon with modeling. And there was also another pit that we didn't go down, which is on page 8, which was done up in that area, which showed the area with the grass, the organics right below. So when they filled, they didn't dig up the grass. That showed that, hey, we didn't dig, it just went over the grass layer.
So in this photo that you handed us right now, an aerial photo, is that what looks like a bush in the center? Is that the willow that we're speaking of?
That's correct.
Okay. I thought that was very useful to have that there. It kind of focuses, because otherwise you can't tell distances one way or the other. So what is the actual dimensions of what you think the area of interest might be, not considering the swale?
Now, this polygon that you're looking is greater than the area of interest. The area of interest would be a little bit narrower, but that's where we have to determine the edge.
So-
But the whole area, 12,000, 13,000 feet, going down to Christian Street.
Okay, so did you feel that that whole area of interest had been filled, or was the fill kind of isolated in one section?
It went down when the whole area, it's all been disturbed. We need to do more pits along the edge to find out if everything's been filled all the way out.
So if you were asked to submit a methodology for actually investigating to find these hydric soils, more than just the 3 spots that you investigated, how would you accomplish that?
Again, with the methodology of doing wetlands, you can even use the auger. You go down, you would see the topsoil. However, if you hit stone, which in that area we're hitting stone, the auger won't go deep enough, then either you have to hand dig or bring in a backhoe and dig trenches to determine the area.
And how, at what intervals would you do those test pits?
On that area, usually you flag it 10, 20 feet apart. With the soils, as long as it seems to be following some type of contour below the fill, you could get away with 50 feet. It depends on how far you want to, the finite line you want to create.
So, in your opinion, could this fill be removed with the same type of equipment that placed it there, or would you have to be more careful about using smaller equipment or maybe even by hand?
The nature of it, I think, regardless whether you use small equipment or big equipment, you're going to get down to the original elevations, and then you're going to plant. It's not a normal wetlands where you have a cupped wetlands. You're on a side slope where you have seeps coming out of the hill that's feeding that, as well as the farm pond that was filled. So at some point, there might have been a basin, which was the farm pond, and then that was filled well before any of the wetland stuff, before they came in with the proposal. So that area, you're going to need to replant afterwards. So if you're excavating, it's a unique situation. If you're looking for a replication plan, if the project goes forward in regards to with the houses and stormwater management, you might be better off getting a rain garden as part of the replication. Might be a better filtering wetlands than what's on the site right now.
Are you saying not remove the fill and create a rain garden?
No, I'm saying that, well, again, that's up to the board. Right now, I feel there's enough for an enforcement order for filling of wetlands and a stream. Now, as you're going forward, you're doing a replication, but you know you're also facing a subdivision where there may be drainage issues, and the engineer can speak on that, but a rain garden would give you a better quality wetlands in our mind if you were going to do a replication.
Can you characterize how the size or the shape of what you call the swale, I believe? The swale that leads down to the street?
Again, it's narrow. We're only working off historic data as well as the soil pits. My guess is 6 to a foot deep maximum, and about the same width. It's not a huge swale or drainage ditch going down where you have 6 feet slopes or 6 foot bankings. It would be a small drainage ditch that goes down.
And did you see any water flowing there?
The drainage ditch the historic drainage ditch that's been filled? No. The seep where we dug 62 feet from the thing, there was surface water with no flow, which then would go down in what I classified as a relocated drainage swale. There was no flow that we ever witnessed on that.
And you were there when, May?
Mostly June.
June?
I was out there May 29th prior to the contract being signed. I had communication on 6/3 with the proponents. The contract was signed on 6/12. 6/13, I sent out a letter, and then from 6/13 forward, we went out on several days to collect the data.
So I was there in April, just before our April 24th meeting, I believe, and there was definitely a strong flow coming down that hill and emptying out into the street and into the catch basin. So would that characterize it as an intermittent stream?
Again, the pictures in the report show the erosion that would have probably been present in April 29th. That in itself is an intermittent stream. The question is it a jurisdictional wetlands, a jurisdictional stream? The only way an intermittent stream becomes jurisdictional is if it flows through or touches a wetlands. Anything uphill from a bordering vegetated wetland it's an intermittent stream, but not under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. Where that erosion is occurring below a relocated wetlands, right now I don't think it's jurisdictional because the wetlands was filled.
So a restoration would be necessary in order to consider this to be a jurisdictional wetland, is that what you're saying?
Well, it is a jurisdictional wetlands because of the disturbed site, but you're taking things in perspective. You're asking about a drainage that exists right now. at the beginning of the seep that was up there where you saw water flowing. Right below that, and there's a picture on the follow-up report with the two cattails. That's right near the beginning of the seep. Right below that is almost a carpet of horsetail, which is a facultative plant, a wetland plant. That flows down, we're assuming it flows down. I did not witness flow. And it's sloped like a drainage swale. Because it was just recently located, there is no hydric soils down in that area. It is all upland soils, including the side of the swale is where the 4-foot sensitive fern are, and all of that is upland soils. At the seep, it actually flowed out and was closer to the willow that's in your photograph, and then went down to Christian Street. So right now, the way the erosion that's in the report, that has, as you saw in the, it's all Japanese knotweed, American bamboo, where the erosion is. So if you take it on face value, just the vegetation, that's an upland.
So do we have all the elements here of, that are needed in order to declare this a jurisdictional wetland?
I believe so, yes.
And that would be a wetland area determined by hydric soils which have been disturbed by fill.
That's
and
correct.
grading, and a exiting stream that at some point runs on the surface with water.
That's correct.
I don't know if anyone else has any questions.
I didn't really expect to dive into restoration so quickly, but seeing as we're talking about it, yeah, I mean, I think I want to give him a chance to kind of talk about this from his perspective as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, hello again. Jeffrey Brem with Meisner Brem Corporation. We're engineers. Also with me is Luke Hurley. He's the environmental scientist that was working on this for us. If I can, I'd like to go through my letter of June 25th. And thank you, Mr. Chair. It kind of was a good time for me to stand up for what I have to say. So we concur with Mr. Garno that there are two potential jurisdictional areas on this property. One is an isolated land subject to flooding, and the second is a bordering vegetated wetland. So as to item one, Mr. Garno was pretty clear in his report, and what he just said is that there is no isolated land subject to flooding on the property. So now it just brings us to the second one, bordering vegetated wetland. And I'm the engineer, so I'm not going to talk to you about hydrophytic soils or horsetails or wetland plants, but I'm going to talk about the regulations and how I guess we disagree with that, the last discussion where it's jurisdictional. We believe that it is something. There was probably vegetated wetlands there, but we question, and actually we believe that it's not jurisdictional, and I'll go through that with you. So the first is the catch basins that were mentioned. In Mr. Garno's report, he mentioned there were 3 catch basins. You could read my quotes of his report, but essentially, catch basin 1 and 3, how he labels them, are clearly not connected. Catch basin 2, it says that based on the sediment deposits, it was determined that the flow entered Christian Street downhill from catch basin 1 and uphill from catch basin 2, and then it would run off, it would continue down Christian Street towards catch basin 2. The fact that it goes onto the roadway itself before it enters the catch basin means that's upland, and that wouldn't be connected, i.e. not bordering. So we think the catch basin issue, once it gets down to Christian Street, it has to go through upland, so therefore it's not connected to any downstream wetland. Now, the question now is, and what Mr. Garno is reporting, is that there's a swale on the property, a channel, a ditch, or potentially an intermittent stream. If it were an intermittent stream, is it jurisdictional? So I brought a little chart, flow chart, if you will. Can I take the mic off of here?
Sure.
Good. This is just to kind of flow through using the Wetland Protection Act and the regulations. So the question is, let's assume for the minute, and I don't have any doubt that somewhere on the site there's a freshwater wetland, somewhere less than 12,000 square feet or so. And by the way, this is a 6-acre site, so we're talking about 4.6% of the total property. So it's a very small section. So freshwater wetland, in order to be jurisdictional, has to border on the ocean, an estuary, a creek, a river, a stream, a pond, or a lake. What we're saying here is this is a stream, and the stream flows from some point, possibly near the weeping, to some point where it basically disappears and eventually flows onto upland, i.e. the road, and then into the catch basins. So then the question of a stream, is it perennial or intermittent? And that becomes a very important question. And the discussion tonight and the report clearly shows that it's an intermittent stream, if it is a stream. So we'll circle intermittent. So if it were perennial, it would certainly be a jurisdictional wetland. The question is, if it's intermittent, there are two tests. One is the bogs, swamps, wet meadows, and marshes, is it down gradient of that? And if it is, it would be a jurisdictional wetland. In other words, if there was a bog that drained into it. Or is it up gradient of any bogs, swamps, wet meadows, and marshes? And we're saying it's up gradient because there's nothing there, and therefore it's non-jurisdictional. This is important because this is how the Wetland Act is written. And I have for you a handout that I got from Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. And if you'd allow me, actually I have two handouts. Let me do this one first. Maybe I don't even have to do the other handouts. It depends on the questions. So this comes from the DEP's Wetland Protection Act. In the end of it, there's an appendix, and it describes, the appendix goes through where, why, how they did things in the regulations. And I want to talk about definition of stream.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right, so this is a DEP document, and it really comes to the crux of this definition of stream. And I highlighted the area that's important. What they're talking about is whether certain streams would not be covered under the Wetland Protection Act. And it says, and the definition has consequently been clarified to indicate that intermittent streams are included within the definition, except those portions that are up gradient of all wetlands. And then it refers you to the actual definition of stream in the regulation. Then it says, this provides a clear practical cutoff point for distinguishing between true streams and small drainage channels which flow in direct response to precipitation, which, Madam Chair, I think that's what you saw in April. So what we're saying, our side is saying that, yes, probably is wetland. There's wetland vegetation out there, and there's probably an area that was defined. But the work that was done that now we can't see what was there, it doesn't really matter because this area never bordered on anything. It didn't border on a stream, didn't border on the ocean, obviously, a river, and therefore it's not jurisdictional. So that's our position.
Was that position made before or after? Was that position made before or after the fill was put on this area?
We were hired way after that, so
Good.
way after. We, just so you know, Meisner Brehm Corporation was hired by Mr. Miller and Mr. Lamar just a short time before we filed the RDA, and that work was done way prior to us getting involved. But I do believe, Mr. Miller's here, that he did check with the city, went to the office to see if there were any wetlands before he did the work. So if you have any questions on that, he's here, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer those as well.
I don't at this time. You got any questions for him?
Were you aware of that 2021 plan that I believe we distributed to the peer reviewer and yourself maybe after the fact?
Yeah, that was a surprise to us, yes.
And so, you know, at that time, you were not aware that there may have been an area that was a wetland further up above the stream, or above the drainage area.
Like you said, I didn't have that plan, and I didn't see the site prior to the work, so we're all of us are somewhat at a disadvantage here,
Okay,
for
so,
sure.
and I believe Mr. Hurley did his work in August, is that correct? So here we are in June, and already Mr. Garno has said that the water wasn't flowing when he was there. It was definitely flowing, and there was no snow cover left in April, and it was definitely flowing very fast. In fact, it had forged its own channel and eroded a lot of sediment. As Mr. Garno noted, it's sitting down at the bottom of the slope. So I believe the reason that Mr. Hurley's report was probably less detailed than Mr. Garno is just the fact that there was no indication, as you say, at the time, and especially in August, that there might have been some alteration that affected a resource. So, I think a more detailed investigation by Mr. Hurley may have found the same thing as concerning hydric soils that Mr. Garno found, since he was also there in a time of dry weather, and there wasn't standing water there at that time either. So, I appreciate the fact that you reported what you saw, but once again, the altered state of that site might have been a red flag to anybody that went out there, just to perhaps investigate and see if there was any earlier information about what the site might have looked like before it was cleared, altered, filled, whatever it was that happened out there, graded.
If I can respond, so when we first got involved, that was what I looked at. What is it connecting to? What was that area? What's it connecting to? I did not find the map that Mr. Garno found of the aerial showing that what looked like something of a channel was there. But I did see, I didn't even know there was wetland. We don't really care whether there was wetland vegetation or not at that point, because I said the question really is, does it border anything? Does it touch anything? Did it connect to the catch basin or not? And I clearly saw that it didn't connect to the catch basin, so I wasn't concerned. We went forward with the RDA. The question since then, which is new to me, was if the stream itself, the intermittent stream, did that emanate from something above it? Was there a wetland, a bog, a swamp, a wet meadow, and a marsh? And just looking at the topography that Mr. Garno supplied, the LiDAR, and also the topography on that plan that showed up, it's pretty steep through that area. And so it didn't look like there was ever any bogs, wet meadows, marshes, or swamps in that area. So again, after the fact, this last week, we looked at it and said, okay, it's not connected by the catch basins, and even if it were an intermittent stream, it's still it's upstream of any wetland itself, so it becomes non-jurisdictional. That's how I looked at it. Remember, I'm an engineer, so I look at it from the words against the property. I didn't look at it whether in fact whether it was a freshwater wetland. I looked at it was it a bordering freshwater wetland?
Well, I think we have more information tonight than we did last time, and I am concerned whenever there's alteration to that extent on a site, especially a site that's that large and has been undisturbed. You really need to be careful to investigate what your resources are. We're not here to stop development, but we're definitely here to prevent storm damage from people who might move into that area, and also to protect resources that might be there, that just covering them up isn't going to make them go away. They're going to pop up somewhere else and cause trouble for somebody. So I appreciate your work, and I think everybody's done the best they could on this as far as determining what's going on out there. And I think we just have to move forward from this point.
Sure, if I can just add one more thing. A long time ago, Bob Gollage, who used to be a conservation administrator for the city of Lowell, appointed me to be on the Stormwater Management Committee back in 1996 when he was working at the DEP. He eventually became commissioner of the DEP, and I worked with him for the last 20-some-odd years on various things that the DEP was doing. I'm on the Stormwater Advisory Committee. I'm a full-fledged member. And I will tell you that we recognize that this is a sensitive area, and I've talked to Mr. Miller and Mr. Lamar, and I think what Mr. Garneau brings up is an important issue, which is, what kind of stormwater management is going to be done when these houses get developed. And I'll tell you that I'd be happy to work with your staff, the engineering department, in developing not just rain gardens. We do bio retention facilities, we do wet ponds, we do whatever kind of fits on the property. But we'd be happy to go through a detailed engineering design as part of this, conditional or not, of what happens here as that property gets developed. I think it almost demands it to a certain extent. So we'd be happy to do that as part of our development process.
I would very much expect that in any way that this property is developed, we will require such items.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is we're well, I said what I said, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before you go, there's one part of this definition that is in somewhat odds to some of the conversation that I've heard from the neighbors. And that's the end of this definition of stream, which defines it as the difference between true streams and small drainage channels which flow in direct response to precipitation. There have been a lot of comments that have led to the potential, obviously this is all speculation, but that it's not all precipitation, a result of precipitation here, that there are springs, that there's water runoff coming off this hill in times unrelated to any kind of rainfall event.
Well, there's a reservoir just a few hundred feet up a hill, so.
Sure. So having water up there, in whatever way it gets there, I mean, if it's, if it was pumped into that reservoir and then it's sitting there, this isn't precipitation. There's lots of opportunity for water to make its way through this earth, and honestly, springs have been mentioned.
But springs isn't one of them. So to answer your question, bogs, swamps, wet meadows, and marshes, those are the ones that have to feed, so to speak, the stream. So if it's coming out of the side of a hill or if it's coming from the reservoir, those aren't the four. It's pretty clear in the regulations. I've actually had this dealt with on another project before. And in that particular case, I will say it came from a vernal pool that had water in it. And the engineer, the expert said, there's your source. And the stream disappeared, similar to what this one is doing. It just disappeared, went into upland. In that particular case, he said, because there was a vernal pool there and water in it most of the time, that was the feeding thing. That was the bog or the swamp or the wet meadow or the marsh. And that made sense to me, and we had to make changes. But this one doesn't have that. It may have, obviously, as a source, whether it be precipitation coming out of the hill, leaking reservoir, or precipitation. All those things contribute to the water being there. My point is, it's not one of those four.
Wouldn't you say that in order to have facultative wetland plants growing there, as they found in their test pits, that the water would have had to have stood there long enough to have become a wet area?
That's where I leave and Luke comes in, if you want to have him respond to that. Luke?
Luke Hurley Environmental. To answer your question, yeah, there's got to be some certain period of time. It depends per plant. Sometimes you'll see some wetland plants climbing up a slope where they really don't have a lot of water. You also see the opposite, where you have some upland plants growing down into wetter areas where it's not saturated all the time. So there does have to be some amount of saturated conditions for the hydrophytic plants to grow. Doesn't mean it's necessarily saturated all year long in order for them to grow there. They just need some source. It's like any other plant. It has to have some source of water. The number of days in a spring season for a plant to have water at its roots for it to grow is debatable. But there has to be some source of water there for some period of time for the hydrophytic plants to actually grow. That's correct.
And would it be possible for these plants, the facultative ones, to be existing where there's not water year-round standing?
It's possible. That's why the facultative, if you look at the list of anywhere from obligate to upland plants, facultative is in the middle. So one of the most common facultative plants is the red maple. You'll see that from anywhere at the top of the White Mountains down into the wettest beaver ponds still alive. Facultative plants don't mind if they dry out for a certain period of time. They don't mind if they get really wet for a certain period of time either. That's why they're facultative. They'll grow pretty much anywhere.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So there was fill put on this land before you took the job, correct?
Correct.
Do you know how much fill was put in this area?
Mr. Miller's here. You want to hear from him?
Yeah, I'd love to.
We brought in 4 or 5 truckloads of 3-inch stone so we could get a dumpster truck down there because we bought it off or whatever. It sat there for a long time. There was debris. There was debris down there. There were truck parts, pallets, stumps. Somebody had cut tree. We never cut. I heard this about cutting tree. We never cut one tree in there. The previous people cut trees. They had a bulldozer in the middle of their property with trees growing up through it, and one of the uncles wanted the bulldozer.
So how much fill was put in that area?
It was probably 4 or 5 10-wheeler loads of 3-inch stone.
Okay.
And the same loom, there's no loom hauled in there. The same loom that was there is still there. That was just to get a path down the middle.
So that's changed the area.
There was no, if it was, I know wetlands. I've been building roads since 1986. I've done the largest wetland crossing in the town of Westford, Equestrian Estates. I know what a wetland is. There was no wetlands that.
But we had no environmental specialists look at it before that fill
Correct.
was put in.
And I can give you the plan that the city gave me when I first went there. And I asked, is there any wetlands or anything on this property before I bought it? And we bought it. And they gave me this one plan with this blue line on it. It has a date on it and everything when they gave it to me. And there was a woman behind the desk that worked for conservation. I said, can you find out if anything's been filed or anything's been brought up about this as far as having a wetland? He came back and said, no, but this blue line should be looked at. So we didn't go anywhere near where this blue line is, anywhere near it. And that's when we hired these guys. I said, we got to get this blue line figured out. And that's when they hired Hurley. And here we are today.
All right, thank you.
You want this? Came from you guys.
Didn't come from me.
No, I don't think anybody's still there.
Yeah.
We're faced with 2 differing opinions, right? We've hired a third party for a reason. They've provided us with an opinion. As far as I'm concerned, the third party opinion is what we need to go by, in a difference of opinions. I mean, that's why we brought them in, to check to see if they agreed with you, then this case is closed, but they don't. And so I'm inclined to follow their opinion. I'm only one member of this board. But as far as I'm concerned, we need to start with an enforcement order and a remediation of this site. The process to doing so is something up for discussion if the board agrees that that's the direction we should be going in, but let's start there.
I did find the peer review report was much more detailed than what we had been given previously, and I think we've talked about why that would be. But I think the first step would probably be, and I must say, I agree with the peer report more than the original, because that is what I saw when I went out there in April of this year. I saw the fill, I saw the grading, the basic disruption of the site. And I also saw the water flowing very quickly down that hill. It was not snow melt, it was not rainwater. So I'm inclined to feel that the peer report is closer to reality than the original report, which was very undetailed. But I feel before any restoration is done that we do need to investigate to actually find out if, the extent of this possible resource area. We know it's a large site, and we know that most of it is still going to be developable. But we do need to carefully consider where the resource area is, and this is why I was asking Mr. Garno what his methodology would be to determine that. And I think that's the first step before anything is touched. It's been touched once. We don't want to touch it again and have it turn into something else that then needs to be investigated. We want to deal with it as it is right now. So I think a method, an approved method of investigating the extent of this wetland, and it might include taking into account the earlier wetland delineation area that was done in 2021, which was fairly recent, actually. We could contact that wetland scientist perhaps and get a more detailed report of why that report was done that way, why those wetland flags were placed where they were. So I'm in favor of investigating. If this needs to be done in the form of an enforcement order, then that's something fairly common that we do. It doesn't mean that the person is, really done something horrendous out there. It just means that we want work to be sure not to continue until we've investigated and remediated what may have been done that shouldn't have been done. So then I think is the time to maybe try to delineate the area that we want to protect, and that's the area that we want to restore. It's possible that not all of the fill out there is within the wetland area or within the buffer zone, because we don't know what that area might be at this point. So before you start removing fill, I think it would be a good idea to determine the extent of the area in question. And that investigation would include a delineation then perhaps of where the new wetland area might be. Now, this might require the development to be modified a bit. I did notice that the 2021 report seemed to touch on about 5 lots that are, as they are proposed on the current report as far as the subdivision. But you have very large lots there, 20,000 and more square feet. And I think that, it's not a bad thing to have a wetland in your backyard or a piece of wetland, and we can deal with that as far as, providing an opportunity for development and protecting the resource. But that's what we want to do before everything gets disturbed out there a second time in the course of building. So it's up to the board whether they feel an enforcement order is the next step, but we do have an RDA in front of us, and I believe we need to rule on that. And I'm of the opinion that this is a positive determination, that this is an area that's applicable, and but that it was going to be delineated if we chose 2B on the positive part of the form. The boundaries are not confirmed yet, that we would need to delineate those boundaries, and then we would be in a position to determine if the proposed development is going to affect anything regarding that resource area. But we do need to take it into account, and I'm positive that this is going to be an ongoing drainage problem. Not a problem, but a drainage event, an actual resource that's going to continue, and it has to be taken into account. We don't want it filled, we don't want it bulldozed further, we don't want a house put in the middle of it. So those are the steps that I feel we need to take at this point, but I do feel we need to issue an RDA determination tonight. And I'm suggesting that it would be a positive determination, and that we would require a notice of intent for the project.
So we have to open up the public.
If we're all good, anybody else? Yeah, does anybody from the public want to speak? Okay. So there's the determination. There's the discussion of a potential enforcement order. There is the question about whether or not the remediation should be done prior to or in concurrence with any future construction. Obviously, it's going to take time if we decide to issue a positive determination to revise drawings. We should be clear on whether or not we want remediation, a remediation plan and a restoration plan as part of that enforcement order, or if that can be done, under the future development that would come before us in NOI. So it just seems to me that we may get a better product for the rest of the design if we wait until we I would assume that something will be built here. It's not going to stay empty, right? So I kind of would like to look at this holistically and see the final design along with the restoration. I don't think anything is going to change by not jumping on this now, right? It should be restored, I believe, but it can be restored in a way that fits the rest of the development to its maximum capability.
Mr. Chair, it sounds like you're brainstorming, and I'm brainstorming in my head, so let me throw it out there if I can. I like that approach about making it the final solution, I guess, to work for both sides and restore something and create what I think Mr. Garno, both Leo and Kevin said is, why don't you design something that long-term? Seems to make sense. we're going to be stuck in a little bit of a quandary here, so I'm thinking out loud how this all would work. My thought was a subcommittee of this commission, maybe with city engineering department and the planning staff, to get together in a group setting to try to work out some of these details, give us a chance to draw something up, and then take it before you as a subcommittee. I like that approach, and I think that would give you the best end product. We do have a little bit of a time issue, where if you were to issue a 2B positive, then my client has 10 days to do something about that with the state. And since we have two differing opinions of whether it's bordering or not, it would be good to get the state involved. However, if we work something out, we maybe don't need the state. So my brainstorming is this: you issue the 2B if that's what you want to do. I'm not telling you to do that, but it seems like that's where it's going. We would probably appeal that, but during that appeal process, which could start as soon as, after the 4th, we can meet with this subcommittee and some of the city staff and try to work something out. We could always withdraw the appeal, but they only have 10 days for their rights. And then see if we could come up with as you said, a holistic solution that everybody's in favor of. So that's me speaking my mind, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if we find a positive determination, you will appeal, right? An enforcement order can be drafted, which we wouldn't hear until our next meeting, which is a month from now anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm okay with the enforcement order too, which would
Yeah.
include a cease and desist until it was dealt with. I think that's fine too. So I'm not trying to say that we're scared of the enforcement order. We know what that is, and like Mrs. Varnum said, there's just your tool in your toolbox.
It'd be the first time that we've formed a subcommittee since I've been here. So, sure, why not? It sounds like fun.
Okay.
I would disagree with that. We're a small board. Most meetings, we only have this number here, even though there's 7 total. And I think it's hard enough for most working people to get here on our meeting nights. It's not up to us to propose plans and solutions. It's up to the proponent and anyone else to come in and have us approve those plans. I don't know of any instances where we've actually sat down and worked out plans, and I don't think that's our role here.
That's why I was thinking out loud, because let's say we go to the state and the
So
state
I have
agrees
the
with...
second half of my sentence.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. In reality, before I would even consider something like that, I would want to talk to the staff. And I have a couple legal questions about this anyway.
We can't meet without calling an official meeting anyway.
Yeah,
And, we meet twice a month, and,
once in the summer. So,
right,
Yeah, our next 2 meetings are monthly.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah. No, I still stick with, I think perhaps, we issue the RDA, but then an enforcement order will stop that work anyway. So perhaps both are needed, and the enforcement order will stay in place until we get a plan for investigating and restoring the wetland area.
Yeah, I mean, so there's nothing to stop you from appealing, starting the NOI process, redesign, which you may or may not want to do, and spend any of that time or money until you actually get the appeal determination.
So we need
Yeah, I mean, in the
determination.
that's the next step.
Right.
Is to find out if the DEP agrees with the third party or not, right? Because if they don't, then there's nothing to do here.
That's why I was saying
I don't think
there's nothing to do, and we'll not see you again. And I didn't know if you were okay with that, or if you really want to be part of the process. If that's what it is, it is. And I was just giving you an
appreciate the
opportunity.
offer, but
Okay.
I don't think that it's.
I agree with Commissioner Varnum that it's not our role as this commission to get involved with the design of remediation or the design of this site. Our role is to follow the state law and our local regulations. I also agree that I'm of the feeling that this is also a positive, I would say, 2B determination as well. And I propose we just leave it at that. And then these folks can decide how they want to proceed based on that. By issuing a positive 2B determination, I think we've done our responsibility in reviewing this particular case. We've heard your point of view. We've had a third-party consultant. I think I'm sensing this commission is leaning towards believing or taking the advice of this third-party consultant, and that is what is before us at this very moment, is the RDA, and I think we need to respond to that, and I would suggest we limit our response to the RDA, and then these folks can decide what they want to do after that, rather than expanding our scope needlessly at this point, based on what's been presented to us.
Agreed. A motion?
I would move to issue a positive determination on this particular project. A notice of intent should be required, and until the notice of intent is received and approved, the work on any part of the project should not continue or begin. I also would like to check off box 2B on the positive area of the determination that the boundaries of the resource are not as yet confirmed, that investigation of the alteration or of the site would need to be done in order to determine the exact extent of the resource before any other approvals would be able to be given. And I believe we can deal with any restoration in an alternate way, such as an enforcement order, which I feel we could very well issue tonight, but I think, as Steve just said, we need to get this RDA out of the way, and I believe those are the two boxes on it, number 1 and number 2B, that need checking. Just to reiterate that the boundaries of this particular resource have not been delineated yet, that's something that's going to need to be done, and whether that's done under an enforcement order or more informally by submitting a methodology of how we would determine the boundaries of that resource area, and getting a report of the results of those investigations, and in that way we could determine the boundaries, but the notice of intent could proceed, as others have said, could proceed to be worked on at the same time that we're waiting for an actual delineated determination of the resource. The work can't continue if a notice of intent has been required anyway, and the next thing in my mind is the enforcement order. If the proponent doesn't come forward with a plan to investigate that area and thoroughly and excessively to find out exactly where the original historic resource is, from top to bottom, from the wet area of interest down to the street where it exits. Maybe not at all times, but intermittently at least. That's my, part of that was my motion.
I'll second the motion of a positive determination.
All in favor, can I get a roll call?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman Butenaz.
Yes.
We're doing
Oh.
a roll call, right?
Roll call.
Vice Chair Dillon.
Yes.
Commissioner Varnum.
Yes.
Commissioner Laput.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time as well.
Appreciate it. Next up in new business, we have a notice of intent filed under DEP file number 2060831 by the Massachusetts Audubon Society for 1413 to 1415 Varnum Avenue. An NOI has been filed by Niche Engineering on behalf of the Massachusetts Audubon Society. The applicant intends to construct a temporary gravel parking lot, walking trails, and outdoor classroom, and associated drainage infrastructure. Portions of this project will take place within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands. Hello.
Good evening. My name is Jane Calvin. I'm the Executive Director of the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. I'm here just to give you a brief introduction for the presentation this evening. The Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust co-holds the conservation restriction on this property with the City of Lowell. Pawtucket Farm Wildlife Sanctuary is a project that takes place that's at 1413 and 1415 Varnum Ave. This property has been envisioned for probably about 20 years, and in December we finally closed on the acquisition of the property. So we're now moving into phase 2, which we're here to discuss tonight. Tonight we'll talk about the schedule, the phasing, trails and materials and paved planting, what erosion control measures are, and the stormwater design. The Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust and Mass Audubon have been working together since 2005. There are 3 partners on this project, though, including Mill City Grows. And really, the city is the 4th partner since they're co-holding the conservation restriction with us. So we're very excited to be a part of this project, and I'm now going to pass the baton to Renata Pomponi with Mass Audubon, and I'll let you keep introducing people. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Renata Pomponi, Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives for Mass Audubon. We're excited to start with just a little bit of context on the project tonight, since it's our first time with a formal hearing. As Jane mentioned, we are a partnership. We do everything together on decisions on this project, and we're very excited to have the city in that partnership as well. So as Jane mentioned, Mass Audubon is the owner of the property, with the CR co-held by Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust and the city, and we have an agricultural lease to Mill City Grows. And our approach from the very start of the project is really be to look at the intersection of what we each bring to the project and what we feel will be most beneficial for this as the last family farm in Lowell, and becoming a preserved space. So we spent most of 2022 and 2023 listening to the community. We had 9 sessions in 4 different languages, really trying to understand what people wanted to see in this as a preserved open space. And we, in looking at that input, we really came to 4 guiding principles for this project. The first is just adding more open space to the city as a place for people for outdoor recreation and educational opportunities. We also heard very clearly that people were excited about accessibility on this project from all dimensions of what that term includes, and so that's been a guiding principle as well. Mill City Grows brings in the agricultural aspect and the importance of food security and food diversity in this community. and Mass Audubon and Lowell Parks are really the focus on the ecological stewardship, turning this property from what had been essentially a monoculture into a very diverse set of habitats that are a wonderful place to visit and learn about nature, but also provide climate resilience and great habitats for wildlife. So the culmination of that work over that year and a half has been the development of a framework plan that is really guiding our development of the property. We've established zones where the wildlife are prominent, zones where people are able to get out into very natural areas, and then busy spaces closer to the road where we're anticipating continuing the historical use of the property as a farm, and also introducing some new built elements that will allow us to achieve our educational goals. So I'll pass over to Liz Stetson to talk about those parts of the project.
Thank you. Liz Stetson, Senior Director of Capital Assets and Planning with Mass Audubon. The plan you see here represents sort of the long-term vision for the property, but our intent is to, implement that vision carefully and thoughtfully over a number of years through 3 phases. As Jane mentioned, we've completed the first phase, which was really to conserve and protect this property in perpetuity. That has been done. We're now in phase 2, which is what brings us here to the commission today. The goal of phase 2 is really to be able to open the property to the public so that residents of Lowell and beyond can come and enjoy this place. So phase 2 includes a fairly limited scope of a small parking area, trails, an outdoor classroom pavilion, and associated stormwater management, which you'll hear more about from our team. Phase 3 is still a ways off. Starting in 2026 or later is when we would be looking at possibly building an education center or other facilities on the property. But phase 2 is where we are today. Our hope for kind of implementation of phase 2 is that the trail construction would begin in late July through this fall, and the outdoor classroom would be built in the fall into end of this year, early next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our design team to talk through a little bit more of the technical details.
Thank you, Liz. I'm Radhika Mahan, Senior Landscape Architect with Agency Landscape and Planning. So as you all are familiar with, the project is located at 1413 and 1415 Varnum Avenue. The site is also an important ecological link between the Lowell-Dracut-Tingsboro State Forest up at the north and reaching out towards the Merrimack River at the south. As Liz noted, the phase 2 work consists of building out the trails, a temporary parking lot, and the outdoor classroom and the associated stormwater management features. The first phase of ecological restoration will also start, and the goal is to restore the land to an ecological landscape of heathland and grassland with areas of shrub, and with an edge forest providing that important link back to the state forest. This slide shows a view of the outdoor classroom adjacent to the pond. It is a covered pavilion structure with some built-in seating and infrastructure for the partnership to host some of their programming and events. The trails within the sanctuary are a combination of an accessible trail made of dense graded gravel, as shown in the blue line, and a compacted dirt path, as shown in the green dashed line. The layout of the trails were carefully designed to work with the existing topography and the existing ecology, as well as to provide a pedestrian experience through the landscape. The phase 2 planting is really focused on starting the ecological restoration, which will take place over a period of time. Within the buffer areas, the intention is to remove the existing invasive species and restore it with native plants that are local to the region. So when we take a closer look at the planting palette, as you can see, for shrubs and ground covers and perennials, we are proposing a series of native plants and a seed mix provided by the New England wetland plants, composed of a number of native species. And now I will turn it over to Jonathan Headland, our civil engineer, to talk about erosion control and stormwater measures.
Thank you. I'm John Headland with Niche Engineering. I'm a project manager. So we're going to speak about the erosion control plan. I want to note to the commission a ORAD was approved on May 26th, and that delineated two wetland areas, one on the southwest, which is within the pond area, and also a BVW on the northeast. So within those jurisdictional areas on the northeast side, we have a trail going through this area that will be actually reducing the impervious area within this area. So I'm going to be focusing on where more or less we're constructing the major construction and also where we're increasing impervious area. So that's depicted on this plan. As you can see, we're within the jurisdictional area of the pond. Within the jurisdictional area, we have outdoor classroom space, we have a retention pond. Upslope of this, which actually feeds that retention pond, and all the water coming down the slope, we have an infiltration swale with a series of check dams to reduce the velocity and also increase and promote the infiltration within this area. So at the high point of...
Say that again for me one more time.
Oh,
Check dams to what?
to increase more or less, so that reduces the velocity of the water.
Velocity. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of the water and actually increases infiltration. So this infiltration swale has a high point at the middle. The north side goes to another retention pond on the north side of the property. That's actually depicted above the temporary parking lot. And downslope of that by the outdoor classroom, that swale also feeds the retention pond in this area with overflows that all eventually go into the pond area. For the temporary parking lot itself, we have a riprap apron and a bio-retention trench, and that will take care of the TSS treatment for this area, and that's designed for the 1-inch recharge volume. So, thank you.
It's very exciting to see you guys here in front of this board after spending so much time with you at community preservation. I'm looking forward. Can't wait to play on it. You know, that we're talking about some, you know, well-designed, non-impactful infrastructure improvements. I saw that the section of the trail that will go within the wetland buffer was all just compacted dirt. You know, I know wholeheartedly that this design is, you know, as low impact as possible to keep as much natural aspect of this place as you can, and I appreciate it. I don't have any specific questions. I was impressed and excited.
Do you intend to have any kind of man-made irrigation system there?
Negative.
No? I did think that, of course, the plans were very well thought out and very well drawn out. You're eliminating some trails or some roads that exist today. Is there one particular trail that's going to be all accessible?
So shown here in blue, starting at the parking lot, we have an all-persons trail that will connect sort of towards the east of the site at the base of this hill, come up the grade a little bit, come back down, and form this loop that goes around. It also comes to an overlook point, which will be a nice place for people to get a view of the Merrimack River. It also loops back around this way around a hill, coming up to the top of the hill, essentially, and then loops back around the hill. So that is intended to be an all-persons trail. The remaining trails, which are shown in the green dashed line, are mostly compacted dirt parts. And all of these are sort of designed to work with the existing grade, and also were carefully designed, just trying to keep some of the ecological communities on the site as intact as possible.
Thank you. I would expect that the pond edge would be an area, especially being near the education building, would be an area that would get quite a lot of foot traffic along the edge of the pond. What's planned to keep that from becoming an erosion problem?
So in this area right here, we have, it's hard to see on the plan, but let me go back to a view. So we have a concrete edge to essentially hold the edge of the outdoor pavilion and prevent people from going towards the pond. And we have more of a landscape that will integrate some sort of rocks or other plant features that are a little bit higher to also prevent some of that access towards the pond. But it's intended to be pretty open and, a space for all.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So being an NOI, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak? Come on up, give us your name and address for the record, please.
So my name is Hugh Gannon. I live at 1365, which is just adjacent to the farm.
Raise
Yeah,
the
m-
mic a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect, thank you.
Hugh Gannon, 1365 Varnum Ave. It's adjacent to the farm. I'm not too familiar with these terminologies on the wetland and whatnot, but I'd like to understand the infrastructure that's being planned for the drainage. Specifically, or to the point, is it going to go to the pond, the drainage that is now in, will it be steered into the pond to raise the pond level? Or, he just briefly mentioned it, but we have no real understanding of what's going to happen with that drainage. Is there anyone that could, in simple terms?
I'm sure their engineer can revise in a little bit more simple to understand.
Yes, let me answer that question. So let's go to the stormwater plan, which is depicted here. And here's my mouse cursor. So we have a retention basin in this area and a retention basin in this area. We have elevated the side of the property, so that is higher and forcing any water that overflows from this detention basin through the farm area to the pond itself. And please note, this is just the phase 2. We're going to have future build out when there's actually a more or less parking lot here, and this is going to be interconnected for a comprehensive stormwater system. For the pond on this area, this has a riprap apron that is going to overflow also to the pond. All of the topography of the site naturally grades to the pond itself, and we're making sure that there's a high point here that will not allow water to go to the plan north.
So to answer your first question, yes, the water is directed to the pond, but it is already directed to the pond on the site, right? That's the downhill, that's the collection point. And he's said that he wants to close off its lowest outlet. So if the pond was to raise its level, it would not overflow to the plan up that we just saw there.
So it's the detention basin that we're proposing,
Oh, okay.
not the pond itself.
Okay. So where does the pond outlet, where the water level to get higher? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we've observed the pond sort of overflowing into the farm field, actually, and that was part of the thinking around this stormwater swale, is to slow the velocity of water entering the pond so that that would reduce that overflowing. So some of that water, that we have seen overflowing would be captured in the stormwater swale, slow down, infiltrate there before it got to the pond. I don't know if that answers the question.
I'd also like to note that we're infiltrating roughly 10,000 cubic feet more of water than in the current conditions.
Is there something about that water? Can we do one thing at a time? Thanks. All right. What is your actual concern?
So as you said, the water goes to the, I'll say, the north side of the pond, and it goes to the farm fields.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been the case, or when it gets high water levels. If there's some infrastructure, a component that's going to steer that water rather than out towards the farm fields, then steer it into the pond, I have a concern with that. Now, I don't know what it means by drainage infrastructure.
So drainage infrastructure is anything that directs water, that holds water, that allows infiltration into the ground. And yes, there's some diversions toward and away from that pond based on new topography. Changes in elevation, right? The water's going to flow a little bit differently because they're working on it. They are greatly increasing the rate at which the water goes into the earth. They're putting up new drainage infrastructure that allows for more rapid infiltration into the earth. So,
Is that like crushed stone or other kinds of underground components, or is that just...
can you tell us how exactly you increased the infiltration rate?
Sorry. Oh, not a problem. All right. So we do have details. You can see this is the infiltration swale along with the check dam. So yes, we're going to have so yes, there's going to be a soil media that can absorb the water, reduce the runoff of the water into the pond itself via the check dams and the highly infiltrated soil of the swale itself. For the actual temporary parking lot, we have a bioretention trench. This has a crushed stone media, pea stone, and also underlying stone layer. So that's...
So I've seen these diagrams, and, okay, I get the gist of it, but I don't see, what it really comes down to. Is it trenches that you dig in that then divert the water?
So it's not just diversion, right? The purpose of these things is really to hold the water at certain storing locations, right? Because when you have a puddle, that puddle is just going to go into the ground. And so they're creating trenches full of rocks with a check dam, which is basically just a little wall that allows, some stretch of water to be held in. And then when the water goes up, it's going to pour over the check dam and onto the next little trench, right? So they're creating little holding cells on the way to the pond and allowing that water to be infiltrated into the earth at more areas than just the pond. It's really good. It's not going to overflow in any other direction. It's only going to overflow in exactly the way they want it to overflow, which is toward the collection point of the pond.
And our history says it does find its way outside of, towards the farmland, farm field. So
Yeah, when you get enough water and the pond overflows, then it goes into the farm. But they're reducing the amount of water that will happen less often because they're increasing the rate at which it's infiltrated into the ground. The water will go into the ground faster under this design because they're increasing the area in which it's infiltrating. Yeah. Cool.
My wife.
Sure. Come on up.
Brenda Gannon, and so if you could pull up the screen that has the pond outline, any one of them. Well, let's see. Yeah, sure. So if you see the angle that's going into the pond, it's a long property border from the bottom right that goes up, and then it's into the pond and comes out.
That's a property line.
That's
there that
our
cuts through
property line. That's
Okay.
our house.
Great.
Our land. So we own some of the pond
Got it.
also in the border. And I'm almost 64, and I've lived across the street and my whole life from that, and my grandfather lived in the house we're in. So I've seen the history of this pond for a long time.
Sure.
Long time. No, the Perrons we're very excited about this project, but that's not the issue. The issue is we know the history of how this water goes.
Sure.
And
Happy to hear it as the board.
Sorry?
We're very happy to hear it too. We need
Yeah.
to know about this.
Yeah.
Thank you for
so
sharing.
there's a lot more to this than this. I mean, and I'm very interested in. I'm not an engineer. I don't I still don't understand what's going to happen with the drainage. Very happy to learn how to understand it, so that'd be great. Hopefully it's all going to work great.
If
But-
there's ever a group of people that'll take you on a walk and show you what they're building,
Yeah,
it's
well,
this group right
I've
here.
been on some walks. That part, I mean, I grew up playing in those woods, and so that part I get.
Sure.
It's more, where this water is going to go. We've seen where it goes. Wetlands, there's wetlands there, and we know nobody's talked about that 100-foot, but we have there's wetlands. Our backyard has flooded from that pond recently. So there's a lot going, I know you guys are excited about this too, we are too, but we've got to hold on here a little bit.
Sure. I mean, the 100-foot buffer was shown in that plan that we were just looking at.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they're doing in this phase is the creation of a compacted dirt path in that zone between the 50 and 100 foot. And so that's totally fine by us. As long as there's no unstable soil that makes its way into the wetlands. And that's the purpose of erosion control measures, and there was a whole presentation on
Yep.
that. So we're good.
Okay.
We always watch that. That's our area.
So how
within 100
how
feet.
can you help me with my concern?
Sure.
That's what I would
Go
be
ahead.
curious.
What, what is that?
It is that everything's going to be altered, and what's going to happen.
So for
And
them
nobody-
to have our approval, they would need to show that they are going to improve the situation. That they're making it less likely for that water to reach its worst case scenario elevation. And they're doing that by adding to the amount of groundwater infiltration on the site. They are making the water that lands on their property go into the earth faster than it does currently.
Okay. Why are they doing that? Why don't they just leave it alone?
Because it's a trade-off for being able to put buildings and roads and parking lots. And so this is drainage infrastructure that is required to mitigate the other side of what they're doing. They need to leave it better than they found it. And they're going to want to put some pavement, which is worse.
It
So in
is
exchange, you put in stuff that is an improvement. It's
Okay.
not equal, it is an improvement.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough. you know, it's just, these are
These
are
I
things
hear
that
you. It's your
is
home.
your expertise and not mine, anyway. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but it's concern, you know, it's I just want to understand it as best I can, and seeing pictures of drains and all these things is not exactly, it's just, and when the trails, I mean, it's going to move dirt, and there's just a lot of, I looked at this, seeing it natural and thinking of that, we're just concerned about the water runoff.
Yeah, not to say that you shouldn't be asking these questions, but the reason that we are all on this board is because we have the same questions of everybody that wants to build anything within wetland areas.
But why are we having this, why are we here then? If, in other words, if it was all okay, why are we here?
Because the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction within 100 feet of any wetland areas, and we are required to review and approve those plans for disturbances in any natural buffers to natural resource areas.
Okay, so
we're looking at their plans and we're asking them questions as we see fit. And in this case, they were very detailed and very low impact, and we had very few questions.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I did understand that. Part.
That's part of why you are seeing us dive a little bit less deep, perhaps, than we may on other projects, is because because of how detailed it was, and also how well we know these partners to our community.
So So is it just going to get approved tonight and we don't, I mean, how does this work?
This is phase 2 of their construction. There's going to be a lot more. This is the least impact of all the phases.
And the other part is altering whatever water goes into that pond. We own part of that pond. So that's an issue.
There'll be, what their design says is that less water will make it into that pond from other parts of their property, because it's being pulled into the earth faster via these infiltration areas with the check dams and the drainage swales.
So what's going to happen to our property is getting approved by you, even though we didn't know what.
So from my perspective, this is probably one of the best possible projects that could have landed next to you. There are a ton of other projects, people who could have bought this and put up a ton of condos, and you'd be fighting that right now. So just from my perspective, this is probably the best possible thing that could have happened next to you.
I guess I was misunderstood. I'm not fighting anything.
No, I know.
That's not the point. I just think we should be consulted as to all these drains and storms, all these things. I mean, it's
all those drains are going to help the stormwater in your area.
You've all questioned a lot, but it's obviously already set. I'm disappointed, I guess I could say, that the way it was presented and the way you're coming across, but you know, if it's already,
that's all right.
then that's,
yes.
You know.
So what I'm hearing is you own a portion of the pond, and you're concerned. What I'm hearing is you own a portion of this pond, and you were not consulted in regards to how this may impact your portion. Is that correct?
Well, correct.
You wanted to be part of the planning, or at least have some say because you own a portion of the pond. Is that what you're saying? I'm asking. This is a concern.
Okay, I think I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Liz Stetson, Mass Audubon. I just wanted to make a few points of clarification. Just to describe kind of this swale a little bit more, is a vegetated swale. So I think we're talking about rocks, and it sounds very sort of technical and man-made, but our goal also is that this is a restored habitat. So we want to have plants there that will support that habitat and be, a benefit to the property. I also just wanted to clarify that the outdoor classroom is within the 50 and 100-foot buffer. The trail that you referred to is, the other other piece within the buffer. And then lastly, we have observed the pond level artificially being regulated by, water pumped out of it. So I think in addition to, the flooding that we've seen in the field, that's sort of an added indication of the need to kind of control the level of water that's entering the pond.
Is this farm infrastructure? What?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's on this property.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just another, I think, another reason that we have
Yeah. There's definitely
learned that we need to manage that water level.
infiltrate some of it on
Yes.
the pumped out area.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Sorry, just one last point. We definitely, want our neighbors and all of the community to be involved in the planning process, and as you said, would be more than happy to walk the property with these plans, look, on the ground about where these elements are going, and help to clarify any questions that we can that way.
Any other members from the public? Any comments here? A motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Any
I'll
other?
second.
Oh yeah, sorry, we need to vote on that. Go ahead.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And any other motions regarding the notice of intent?
Move to issue a standard Lowell order of conditions based on the plans, which are very complete, as the chair said.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. All right, I'd like to move out of order a little bit. Request for determination of applicability, filed by Wendy Luna, project location 155 Totman Street. A request for determination of applicability has been filed by Wendy Luna, seeking to construct 2 decks at 155 Totman Street. The proposed work is within 100-foot buffer zone of a protected wetland. Is anybody here from, for this project? No Lunas. Anybody online? Nope. All right, can I have a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue this to the next meeting.
7:24,
7:24.
I think.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I have an enforcement order by the city of, on the City of Lowell Department of Public Works. Violation location is 73 Weber Street. Multiple trees have been removed and disturbed a large area of soil at 73 Weber Street. This work was done within the protected area of Black Brook. Hi.
How's it going? Evan Walsh, engineering manager under DPW, and I'm here with Paul St. Cyr, the DPW commissioner. First of all, I want to thank the commissioner and or the chair and the members of the commission for allowing us to be here and speak on the matter. The event occurred around Black Brook at the culvert under Weber Street. DPW went in August of 2023 based off concerns from citizens to clear out the culvert. During that time, they removed natural debris and man-made debris, tires, trash, other debris from the area. The natural debris was put in the pile. I think pictures in your packet show the pile that still remains today. That was not removed off-site. The unnatural debris was removed off-site and taken care of. In May of this year, additional work was done based off a concern, to clear the culvert and lower the water level there. We understand that this was done without an RDA or emergency certification in front of the Conservation Commission. So we want to rectify it, work with the Conservation Commission as well as the neighborhood residents. So what we're proposing, and please feel free to add on to anything that you deem necessary to take care of this violation. We're going to train all staff that could be working, make sure that the city engineers are properly trained, as well as other people within the DPW are properly trained and understand where the wetland jurisdiction is and how to properly put in RDAs and other matters to kind of make sure that we appease the Conservation Commission. Additionally, we can put up a fence because we do see a lot of trash and debris, a fence with no dumping signs, or Conservation Commission if you guys deem necessary. Additionally, there's pictures. I took a site visit yesterday. The bank, the slope looked to be disturbed, so the city engineers will work with the streets department to stabilize the bank. Please feel free to add anything, or if the public would like to speak.
So you mentioned the fence. I hadn't really considered the fence because I mean the work was done, I think, to clear blockage at the drainage.
Correct, and remaining
the point of exit.
I was going to say, I think this is going to be an ongoing issue based off it occurring in August and occurring in May. So if a fence was put up, we would propose having a gate and kind of coming back potentially with an RDA to make sure there was a maintenance plan associated with the work that needed to be performed in the future.
Yeah, I usually avoid putting fences up to keep people from throwing trash, because then they just throw it over the fence, and then it's harder to get it out. So
understood. We were just trying to see how we could prevent.
Yeah, I mean,
from going on.
sedimentation, sediment erosion, stabilization is the most important. It is a pretty good area of sunlight, but it might make it a little bit easier to get that, future debris out of that point of exit as well. If we can have something that, stabilizes the slope, that allows for, a little bit more maintenance in that area. I know that there's a member of the public who may be interested in aiding in the restoration of that area.
Yeah, we're always happy to work with the public.
Yeah. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Anybody else got any other thoughts?
In the photos, it looks like there was extra soil dumped in that area and perhaps spread around. Is that not the case, that's all natural, that soil that's there?
I was going to say, not that I'm aware of. I talked to the streets department head, and they didn't
I'm
mention any
wondering why
additional
there's so
soil that might
little-
have been disturbed from the activities of removing it. I know they said as they were removing some of the debris, the trees, they had to drag it up the slope, so that might have caused some disturbance, which makes it potentially look like soil was added because the vegetation was removed as they were doing the activities.
I'm wondering why, when everything else is so lush green right now, why there's nothing growing in that particular area.
I was going to say, I did do a site visit yesterday, and I have pictures where it is green again, but if you would like to see them, I can bring them up.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly this last photo, it looks like, something was pushed over the edge there.
Yeah, I think that was the removal of the debris that probably caused some of that bank to shift, the soil to shift. That's why, as Brad said and I said, we're proposing some soil stabilization and pretty much making sure that bank is stable and no more soil falls or goes into the culvert or the brook.
So those branches and trunks going to be removed from there?
If you would like, we can remove the natural debris.
Yeah, I think it'll make the process of clearing the thing easier for the next time.
Yeah.
If we're going to be doing restoration, we might as well, open
Yep.
that up as
Absolutely.
much as possible.
I know sometimes you want to leave the natural debris in there and other times you want to take it out. Obviously, it's a big pile, so I agree with that recommendation.
Yeah. I climbed in there once last summer to cut some stuff loose too. That was there, right? Wasn't that there, where, yeah.
Black Brook?
Yeah, I went swimming a little bit over there. Trying to get it flowing again, so.
So just to be clear on what you want to remove, it's the one pile, it's not any other sticks, it's what's been formed in that pile. I just don't want to remove anything additional that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's
Commission
dead
doesn't.
stuff that can help this water flow a little bit better, then,
Yep.
then have at it while you're down
Perfect.
there.
Yeah, so we weren't notified before this work was done, correct?
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to rectify that.
Yeah, we just need to get on the same page.
Agreed.
This kind of reminds me of the waterway vitality debacle that happened along the river. And I know that was before you were even in the position. But yeah, we just need to be on the same page. Anytime you guys are doing work within the wetlands, just let us know. And then we can all kind of be on the same page and we won't have to do this.
Agreed.
I was actually going to bring up that as a larger concern of mine. This is, a year ago, we had a situation where DPW was involved with extensive cutting of trees along the Riverwalk. And we were told subsequently to that several times that staff at DPW were going to get training a year ago on proper procedures having to do anything with resource areas in the city. And then here we are now with yet another situation of that. And you mentioned training again, and I'm just voicing a concern that, has the training, when is this training going to occur?
Yeah, I understand your frustrations. This was before myself or Paul were involved in the matter, or at least myself. So I know we have a GIS layer with the wetlands mapped, and we also have within the utility viewer that the city can see potential properties that could be affected. So moving forward, part of the training will be utilizing that layer to see, is it even, the first step would be checking that, working with city engineers, streets and city engineers working more closely. We have bi-weekly meetings now where we kind of talk about these small projects like that. So as part of that, we'll integrate that and kind of do more formal training, a formal SOP that will be issued, and we can give it to you as well so you understand what the city plans on doing.
While we're here, on an, fairly unrelated note, those connected streams are all getting overloaded with milfoil. I know it's another item on the list of rampant invasive species to deal with, but that is a wetland killer and has taken this in just a couple of years from a kayakable body of water to a non-navigable one.
Correct.
Knowing that we have that in place, it's time to act on it. It should be part of the broader conversation. Keep it in your mind.
Yeah, we could do some research on the back end. Obviously, it's not part of this issue per se, but it's something that the city will look into.
I've asked some questions. I don't really know what to do with it.
Correct.
And
I'm not a
other than
wetland expert either, but
basically,
we work with some, so we can reach out and kind of get their recommendation on the issue.
It would be helpful to know, because if there's something like that we can, act quickly on in the future. Some concern is that it's already too late for this, based on the amount that I saw last year. So, that's what I got. So we would be looking to ratify this enforcement order. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to ratify this enforcement order.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And so we would expect to hear a plan from you.
Yep.
Start with something, via email, and we will decide if we need you to come in, if we have any additional questions, or hopefully we can just send those back through Peter.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Last week's meeting or 2 weeks ago's meeting was 20 minutes. No, we've done better. All right. And finally, a request for determination of applicability, Mullins Management Company. This project location is 169.1 Bridge Street. Mullins Management Company has applied to the Lowell Conservation Commission to remove fallen bricks from the Riverwalk, repair the area, and engage in restoration work to the building. The proposed work is within 100 feet of the Merrimack River.
Good evening. My
Good evening.
name's Kayla Lesson. I work for Mullins Management Company, and we own the building that I will refer to as the main power building. Is located at tax parcel 169.1 Bridge Street. It is immediately adjacent to the Riverwalk. On March 1st of this year, a large section of the parapet fell off the building and fell into the Riverwalk. It has been closed since that moment and continues to be closed to the public at this time. We are submitting this RDA because we are planning to do a selective demolition of the rest of the parapet area, because now that the middle section has collapsed, that we don't feel the rest of it is safe, especially considering the public's use of the immediate adjacent area. Congress Construction is here tonight as our general contractor to answer any specific questions about the work. We hope to do a majority of the work on the roof and off of the building, as opposed to doing it on the Riverwalk itself, due to the height of the location and safety concerns. We also plan to remove the debris that has been landed on the Riverwalk, restore the Riverwalk, and any damage that happened to the railing system, and then there was also some damage to one of the lights along the Riverwalk. We've been in contact with DPD regarding that. We've been in contact with the administrator of the Lowell Historic Board regarding the demolition and then hopeful restoration of the parapet once the redevelopment happens. I think the only other thing to note is we've also been in contact with the asbestos section of the DEP regarding remediation of some of the roof materials that also fell on the Riverwalk. That has been polyed and secured to keep any areas safe from the public, even though it's not publicly accessible right now, and we will continue to work with them through a non-traditional work plan to make sure that there's no further contamination. The asbestos was found to be non-friable, so we expect to be able to do it by hand and with licensed asbestos contractors.
Do you have a timeline?
We are hoping to get the bricks off of the Riverwalk within the next month. We had a little time delay in terms of trying to figure out means and methods, safety concerns, and structural concerns of the buildings. We've also been able to source a type of rope netting that we think will be a really great, secure solution longer term than what has currently been up on the buildings so far. So we don't have a specific timeline. We're hoping to get, as I said, the bricks off the Riverwalk in the next month, and then hope to start some of the other work in August and maybe September.
Would you envision leaving the Riverwalk closed throughout the entire removal of the parapet?
Yes.
Obviously, we don't have a say in your construction schedule, but obviously this is a path to enjoyment of the natural resource area that many Lowellians are used to using every day. I'm sure you understand the impact. I don't have to say it to you again, but anything that can be done to get this to be safely reopened would be appreciated by many people in this city. Netting of the building throughout both construction and future, until it's repointed, certainly necessary. Now we've seen that. Do you have any plans for removal of the parts of the wall that have fallen into the water?
Yes, we were on site today, and we were able to see some bricks that fell in between the Riverwalk and the building. There's a small area that we can access. It is dry at the moment, so we hope that if we do it quickly, we'd be able to get all of that material up. When the DEP inspector was out, we didn't notice anything in that area that looked suspicious. But if we do find anything suspicious, we'll use the asbestos contractor for that as well.
Is there anything other than brick and mortar that fell, and potentially some of the roof? The roof package.
So the roof system was quite lovely. It had a nice metal cap along the parapet. In the debris that we sampled, we couldn't quite tell exactly what was what and what parts, but we believe that there was, old metal flashing, waterproofing on the back of the parapet that fell. There was a metal cap on the top. Other than that, no, there was some, we had boarded up the the windows previously, and there was some window board debris that I noticed today, but it was inside the netting. It actually had caught in the netting. So no, I can't think of anything else. The railing, I don't recall if it was on the Riverwalk it fell in or if it fell outwards. I believe it fell onto the Riverwalk. Yes, I believe so. Sorry, the railing, I believe, fell onto the Riverwalk itself as opposed to into the river.
Yes.
So you're demoing the parapet. What is the plan for the rest of the building?
The rest of the building, we will investigate any of the facade and see if there's any other brick that is compromised. After we also demo the parapet, we anticipate putting basically a new temporary roof on top of it because we believe what happened was that the roof and the waterproofing had deteriorated, then causing an infiltration point where the roof had met the parapet. So we plan to seal that off from any further water infiltration. And then again, the netting that we propose will be entirely flush against the facade and anchored in several places, so it kind of holds it back more than the netting which is currently there, which is kind of more of like a fall protection. As bricks come, they kind of get guided down, so they're kept away from the Riverwalk.
And then what is the long-term outlook for this building?
Long-term outlook is we are working with the city to submit actually a 40R zoning permit shortly, hopefully. We have a couple of departments that had concerns about different types of access that we're working through right now. So we've been in contact with those departments and keeping contact with Giovanni to kind of move that through zoning. But we hope to apply for zoning this summer.
So hopefully this summer we can start making this building into something that's not going to fall down?
That is our sincere hope, yes. Thank you.
That would be good.
Any motions?
We're looking for a -3. Yeah, I'll make a motion to make a -3 determination.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
for your
much.
time.
6:26 meeting minutes.
Should say 6:12. Sorry.
6:12 meeting minutes. That's today. 6:12 meeting minutes. Motion? Comments?
A motion to approve.
Second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any last comments? Any last comments, Peter?
I'm all set.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll second.
All right. Good night.